In fact, he is the social marketing manager there, and he has actually been involved in social media, social SEO for the last 5 years, which is really the time that SEO and social media start to become really strategic. So he really started at the beginning of that. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Kurt. Whenever you want me to move slides, just let me know.
Okay. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Kurt from Knight Bishop Queen. We're discussing basically the evolution of SEO, or the social aspect of SEO, and how it's changed very, very recently due to Google and other search engine algorithm updates. So basically what was working last year isn't working this year anymore. So there's a whole new shift in it, and it's really awesome stuff because it's just directed towards greater quality work, and people are a lot happier about it. So I think we can prepare to move to the next slide and get going. Okay, awesome. So the SEO of the past, this is what I'll be referring to as old SEO. It was a huge focus on link building, which was people kind of playing tricks, going around to other sites, dropping their links so that Google would read the amount of links that had been dropped and would bring people back to their site. Duplicating, so creating multiple pages, keyword stuffing so that it was virtually impossible for them not to appear on several different SEO rankings because it was just so many different keywords were present. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, and the process of before, as I said, is no longer working. So it's a whole new direction. So the entire thing was focused on ranking high on top of Google or other search engines and drawing in traffic to these sites. Google Penguin, which is the update algorithm, decided to change this. They saw that it wasn't working. They saw that the content people were being brought to wasn't proper. It was stuffed with keywords. It was not based upon the quality of the content, so they decided to change this. So all of these tricks, all the tricks of old SEO are no longer working. They're no longer relevant. And in fact, Google will reprimand users for doing it. They'll knock down your site from the rankings, or it just won't be effective. So these shortcuts have been virtually destroyed. And they had to make room for social media. And social media has become so critical in terms of validating content. It's the great content that's going to be shared and talked about, and this factors into new search engine rankings. So the more content is talked about, the more it's been shared, the higher it's going to appear in social ranking. And so this is a really important thing to keep in the back of your mind, and I'll talk about it a bit later on. And I think we can go to the next slide. Excellent. Okay, so why the old SEO had to go. As I said, SEO was only focused on bringing in traffic. This traffic was kind of useless in the end because it wasn't being converted. There was no use in having all of this traffic to a site because there was absolutely no conversion. People were brought to a site, saw something that was heavily stuffed with keywords or heavily link builded or duplicated, and the content just wasn't there. It's basically a bunch of jargon. So a lot of people clearly were a bit upset with this and would have to go pages and pages in Google to find the content that they're actually looking for, or look for it through other means. And so now all SEO is focused on is converting traffic, which is a lot more desirable and a lot better. People are actually finding the content that they're looking for. So great content has always been the key to getting found and shared. It's always been the most successful way of finding, or for people finding your content, it's always going to be, people will share it through word of mouth, but social media has kind of replaced word of mouth, which is something that's really exciting and awesome. So there are no more shortcuts to bypasses to ignore great content and to do that. It's all about great content, and great content is what's going to be appearing at the top of any social search engine. So now social media is in the spotlight. And as I said, the more content is discussed and shared, the more valuable it is. The more valuable it is to people, the more legitimized it is because it's been validated by several individuals. And because it's more valuable, it's going to be appearing at the top of search engines, and search engines are where you're going to find your most traffic. And so there's a new focus, and the new focus is basically centered on how to create this new content and how do you get it out there. And that's what I'll be talking about. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay. So blogging. Blogging is critical to this entire process. Blogging is how a brand basically comes into itself, and how a brand develops its niche and develops its industry-specific something that people are looking for. So its tenets are basically writing frequently and writing pertinent material that will affect your audience. First off, it's important to know exactly who your audience is. And this can be found through social listening, following proper hashtags, conducting surveys, conducting interviews, finding out where your customers are going to get their information, and bringing this all back to what you want to be as a business, what you want to give your customers, and what you want to appear as on your blog. A great way of kind of finding your niche is following other blogs and bloggers who are inside of your industry, people who have their own particular niches. So say you're selling chocolate, and instead of selling or talking just about all chocolate in general, you talk mostly about like milk chocolate or something like that, because so many other people, there's another blogger who's talking about, white chocolate. And everyone who likes white chocolate will all go to them, and everyone who likes milk chocolate will all go to you. That's basically what we're kind of seeing. Obviously not just about chocolate, but about a lot of industries in general. People are taking very specific aspects of an industry and are elaborating on it inside of their brand. And this is making brands more specialized, and it's converting more customers. So a great way to do this is to begin following blogs and bloggers, and a great way to do this is finding them on Twitter. You can look it through on the search engine on Twitter. You can look through it on your other social connections. Finding them on Twitter is great because the content will always appear on, they'll always be like putting out their own blog content. It will appear on your feed. You'll be able to access that, bring it back, decipher it. Another great one is Google Alerts. So you can set up Google Alerts for free. You just basically set up certain keywords that you think are pertinent to your industry. And every time those keywords appear on a search engine, they'll go right to your email address. You'll receive them, and it will lead. And basically you can kind of just see the current trends inside of your industry. LinkedIn's another good one, and I'll discuss it more in the social media aspect. But LinkedIn is really good for its groups. You can find really relevant groups that focus on a niche or focus on your industry in general. And people will always be putting out business-relevant content on LinkedIn. And this is great content that can be repurposed, that can be shared, that can be looked into. And also subscribing to bloggers' RSS feeds. Basically, you'll just be receiving their constant updates from there. blog. So a lot of issues with blogging is that a lot of the time it's a time issue. It takes up a lot of time. Figuring out the best content that's out there, figuring out what you want to write about, what your brand wants to say. I mean, you can't be too promotional, but by the same token, it's important to kind of do a bit of a soft sell. And you do this by informing people and keeping people informed inside of your industry. People will go to you and say, listen, this person clearly knows what they're talking about. This person knows the industry. They know the ins and outs of this because they're discussing it on so many different lengths. So a lot of the time people have issues blogging at length, so people will instead become curators and abstractors. And an abstractor basically goes out there and finds awesome blogs that are already out there on industry relevant trends, and they'll slightly rephrase it, put it onto their own blog. They'll include the original author's name and a link to the original article, and then they'll provide a few key insights, often in point form, on how to elaborate this, with something they didn't mention, something that maybe they got wrong, you think, in your opinion, or something that could go in some other direction. And this shows that not only does your brand clearly understand great content, but also you have insights that other people don't. And oftentimes these can be much shorter and much easier to write out. But the above options, subscribing to RSS feeds and going on social media, are great ways to find this. Another important thing in abstracting, at least what I've found, was if I'm sharing it on my social media, say Twitter, I'll often tweet at the original author so the original author can see what I've done with their information, see the insights that I've provided. And a lot of the time you're seeing authors, the original authors, liking this stuff and sharing it on their own social media. That way you're open up to a whole new audience. And that's really, it's a great way to kind of be introduced to an audience that's already interested in your industry. Okay, so an important thing to do if you already have a blog is, are people engaging with your blog? And this is something that you really need to keep track of. You need to figure out if people are commenting on your blog, are people sharing your blog. A lot of the times people won't comment, but they'll at least come to your blog. They'll share your blog on other social media outlets. Some people will comment and be like, it's a great article, thank you. And a lot of the time people will ask questions. And it's important to always keep an eye on your blog and to answer these questions as soon as possible, because they're opening up a dialogue with you. And sometimes it will be other business leaders, sometimes it will be other thought leaders, and sometimes it will be potential customers. In either scenario, this is a great way to kind of build up your social ranking, because the more interest there is inside of your blog, the higher you're going to rank on in terms of SEO. And guest blogging is lastly another fantastic option for setting this all up, setting up a greater social element to blogging. You're opened up to new audiences and more social sharing. And a great way to go about guest blogging is actually to just go out there, have a blog that's already prepared, and then go out and email other people inside of your industry and say, here's some content that I have. This is original content, and I'm wondering if you'd like to share it on your blog. A lot of the time people will say yes, because they have a hard time feeding their own blog all the time. So it's a really helpful process to go through. And it's another great one in terms of social sharing, because they'll share it with all of their followers. Would I be able to get the next slide, please? Awesome. So social media. this is this is one of the main reasons why SEO has changed so much. It's important to know what channels you should be on. A lot of people think that they should be on every single channel because there's a potential customer on every single channel. And while that may be true, it is going to dilute your efforts if you split up your process. So it's important to know what channels you should be on. Whether it's Facebook, I mean, some businesses who are really concentrated on B2B won't find any interest in Facebook because it's too B2C focused or it's too informal. Well, whereas a lot of B2C individuals won't find the atmosphere on LinkedIn appropriate because it's too business formatted. There's not enough customers on there. There's no one to sell to. So it's important to know where your audience is. If you're B2C, a lot of the times Pinterest is going to be an awesome avenue to look into because it's all visual, and if you're a highly visual brand, it will definitely be great for you. And if you're business to business, then focusing on LinkedIn is another great option because it's all business based there. It's also important to know where your competition is, to assess who your competition is and what social media platforms they're already on. If your competition is already on every platform, maybe one-up them by reducing what platforms you should be on, concentrating on 2 to start with, and then adding a third if you feel strong enough about the first 2 that you're already in. And this is a great way to kind of center your efforts, to make it more strategic, and to basically win over these 2 social media channels over your competition. So you just have to know what will get your content to your audience. And it's hard to share blog content on Pinterest. You can just show it as a visual and then attaching information behind it, but a lot of the time that's not what people are on Pinterest for. So it's important to know, and a lot of groups in LinkedIn won't let you post blog content. So it's important to read like a group's description beforehand or not, just so you know how best to share your content. So the bottom line is getting the best content in your industry and knowing how and where to share it. The best content is going to be relevant content. It's going to be pertinent content, even topical a lot of cases. I mean, the amount of content I've seen going out about like the hurricane that's just been going on in the States, it's all very topical, relevant to people, and people are making it even more relevant to their industry. So it's knowing how and where to share it. You have to know the platforms that are going to be acceptable to this content. And lastly, it's important to interact with other businesses and thought leaders. And the best way to start as a brand, if you're new to social media, is sharing third-party content. I know this isn't going to be your original content, and it's not going to drive traffic back to your site. But if you don't have a blog up anyways, there's not much content that you can share that's going to be yours. So a great way to start doing things is to share other content and tweet at the people or tag them or bring them in on your LinkedIn conversations and inform these people that you're sharing their content. And a lot of the time, these thought leaders who already have an established audience will bring you into their circle. They'll introduce you to people. They'll tweet at your name and say, thanks for the share. And that's an introduction. People will see that you're sharing this kind of content. It'll be an introduction to you. They'll go back to you, see that you're discussing this information, discussing pertinent information, and eventually when you get your own content up there, people will see that and they'll want to follow it. So this is a really good thing to start with if you're new to social media, and it's a good way to kind of get conversations going. And all these conversations, all these sharings, if you're sharing their content, they're more likely to create a mutual relationship with you and to begin to share your content as well. And by sharing this content, that content already jumps ahead of every other content on a search engine that hasn't been shared. So this is a fantastic way to that social media has kind of revolutionized the way we find things on search engines and the way we find things in this kind of information age. Could I get the next slide, please? Okay, so lastly, it's important to know how your social media presence is going. A lot of the time, especially when you're starting out, you won't see much in terms of commenting, not a lot in terms of sharing. And so your main judge when you're beginning is kind of the traffic that you're bringing in and the traffic that you're converting to leads and then to buyers. Sorry. So analytics are a great way of finding this out and a great way of staying informed as to how your social media presence is benefiting your brand and to seeing whether or not that your audience is engaging with you. So I'd highly recommend setting up analytics to begin documenting your traffic and to begin looking at what kind of people are coming to your site, where are these people coming from. I mean, if you're a North American business but you're getting a lot of traffic from, say, like India, then it's not going to be that important unless, of course, it's something that they can buy online. So it's important to know who's coming in and who's looking at your content, who's wanting to buy your stuff. So Hootsuite's one that's free, and Google Analytics is also free. It's probably best to start off with free software to begin with. You can look into other software as you go along. But yeah, I'd start with either Hootsuite or Google Analytics to kind of look at who you're bringing in, who you're converting to a lead, and how this entire process is going for you. Because if your content is not getting shared and your content is not getting out there, it's not improving at all, then it might be back to the drawing board. You might have to look at, is this content I'm sharing the right kind of content? Is it relevant enough to my audience? Is my competition producing something very similar and I'm not outside of the box enough? It's important to know that your content is working for your audiences. Maybe you're not even on the right social media platforms. So this is great. It's a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error, and it's meant to be very organic and conversation based. That's very important to social media, is that it's very conversational and very organic. So trial and error is the best way of figuring out, is this the right way? Is this what's working, or is this what's working? So I recommend analytics as one of the best tools to kind of documenting that traffic. Another thing is learning where your content is getting shared. If you're getting people in from LinkedIn a lot more than you are from perhaps Facebook, perhaps you're getting no one in from Facebook, but everyone from LinkedIn, maybe it's important to kind of open up more avenues in LinkedIn, join more LinkedIn groups, and kind of scale back your input on Facebook. Maybe a certain conversation topic is what started generating a lot of interest in you. So maybe you should expand upon that, look into that, see if that's relevant enough to your industry. If you produce more content, more people will be interested. So reforming your content as necessary is really important to this process, and is goes much towards what I was saying about being organic with it and being willing to experiment. So yeah, that's the final point. Basically, don't expect all of this stuff to work right off the bat. Be willing to change, because it's important that you're always kind of evolving. This entire process is kind of an evolution. You see what kind of sharing is going on out there, what kind of interest there is being generated, and you either scale back as a result or move forward on certain areas as a result of whether or not that's working for you. So yeah, I'd certainly say do not worry if some direction isn't working, because a lot of the times it will only point you towards another direction that will work much better. So that's what I'd say as a final word to this. Yeah, and that's it.
Well, thanks so much. That was very informative. I'm just going to stop the recording right now. Are there any questions? Again, I will be sending out the recording to everybody. Just double checking if there's been any chats. No questions. If you're listening, please feel free to type in the Q&A right now. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds. So just say, hey, raise your hand, or speak out, unmute yourself, or type it in the Q&A. Otherwise, of course, you can always email us. Kurt's actually from Knight. That's Knight, Bishop, Queen. So if there's any questions, please just let us know. Oh, I see some chats. Sorry. Get under here. Okay. Okay. It looks like no other questions. Okay. Well, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.